We talk about ancient mysteries so much on this channel that you'd think that archaeologists and scientists are pretty bad at their jobs. Of course, that's not the truth. Other than the actually big questions like, what are the true origins of life on Earth? Or how big is the universe? Science is pretty good at solving the more grounded stuff, like how old something is, who built it, and why it was abandoned. So today, we're looking at 15 ancient mysteries that have been solved. Let's begin our list with number 15, Mayan calendar. Well, for a pretty long time, no one could explain how the 819-day cycle behind one version of the Mayan calendar was supposed to actually work. It clearly tied into the movements of the planets and their synodic periods, the time it takes for each one to make a full orbit and return to its starting point as seen from Earth. What boggled researchers was how those movements fit into a short 819-day cycle when each planet follows its own distinct timeline. The answer finally came when they realized the calendar wasn't based on just one cycle, but on a full period of 16,380 days, or about 45 years. Within that period, the timing of every visible planet fits. As writer John H. Linden and anthropologist Victoria R. Bricker put it, Mayan astronomers didn't build the calendar around a single planet. They created it as a long-term system that could track all of them at once. It was never about tiny, short cycles. It was about seeing the bigger picture. On number 14, the sailing stones of Death Valley. The so-called sailing stones of Death Valley have confused people for over a century. Since the early 90s, visitors noticed that large rocks somehow moved across the dry desert floor, leaving long trails behind them, as if they'd just dragged themselves across the dirt. No one could explain it. The valley gets strong wind, sure, but not nearly enough to push 700-pound boulders. That gap between what we saw and what made sense sparked every kind of theory, from magnetic fields to aliens. Why aliens would show up just to move a few rocks around in a place called Death Valley was never explained. Then, in 2011, researchers Richard and James decided to test it themselves. They put GPS devices on rocks, tracked them for 2 years, and by 2013, they had the answer: ice. Thin sheets of frozen water formed under the rocks on cold nights, and as the sun rose, the ice cracked and drifted, slowly pushing the stones. Number 13, Pukios Wells. Everyone knows the infamous Nazca lines, massive symbols carved into Peru's desert that still spark debate. But nearby, there's another mystery that gets less attention. It's a series of deep, spiral-shaped holes bored straight into the ground. For years, no one could explain them. Were they mines, ceremonial, or something else totally? Their shape was too deliberate to be random, but no one knew why they were built. But that changed when satellite imaging finally gave scientists a better look. These spirals, called Pukios, turned out to be part of an ancient water system. They were wells, designed to pull groundwater through a series of underground canals and make it usable for farming. This wasn't simple irrigation. It was engineered control over a dry landscape. The Nazca didn't just survive the desert, they shaped it. These spirals weren't decoration or superstition, they were infrastructure. Proof that a so-called primitive culture understood hydrology in ways that still hold up thousands of years later. Number 12, the lost army of Cambyses II. In 525 BCE, Persian king Cambyses II sent over 50,000 soldiers into Egypt's western desert with pride and power, but they were never seen again. According to the only written account, by Herodotus, the army was swallowed by a sudden sandstorm. He described strong southern winds that kicked up so much sand, it buried the entire force alive. For centuries, the people wrote it off as a myth. a dramatic story passed down by a Greek historian. But that changed in 2009 when two Italian brothers, Angelo and Alfredo, were working deep in the desert when they found Persian weapons, ancient tools, and a massive scattering of bones. Not long after, Egyptologist Olaf Kaper offered another explanation. He said the army wasn't lost to nature, but ambushed by rebel forces led by Pukios III. The myth had been repeated for centuries, but the truth was always there, just buried a little deeper than expected. So, not everything you see is rare. Number 11. The WOW signal. In August of 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio caught a strange, strong, narrow signal that lasted exactly 72 seconds. It came from deep space, sat right on the hydrogen frequency, and then simply vanished. So one astronomer circled the data and scribbled "WOW" beside it. And from that, the name stuck, and so did the mystery. For decades, the signal stood as the best proof of aliens. Nothing like it was ever heard again. But this mystery was solved in 2016 when astronomers revisited the data and looked closer to home. Some comets carry huge hydrogen clouds, and two of them, unknown at the time, were passing through that region of space in 1977. When one of them, named 266/P Christensen, was observed years later, it gave off a signal nearly identical to the WOW signal. It was a cosmic coincidence, something real, rare, and 100% natural, misunderstood because it arrived before we knew where to look. Sometimes discovery isn't about finding answers. It's about finally asking the right question. And number 10. Kilott pottery shards. Nanotechnology might sound like something modern, but trust me, its roots go much deeper than we imagined. Because that's what these ceramic shards from Kilott revealed. These are 2,600-year-old pottery shards coated in what we now call carbon nanotubes. These weren't formed by accident or environmental error. The nanotubes appear in a black surface layer, clearly intentional, giving the pottery a level of durability that's honestly hard to believe. To make this happen, artisans had to fire the clay at extremely high temperatures, something we didn't think was possible in the Iron Age. They likely applied a plant-based resin or organic paste before firing, which means they weren't experimenting blindly. They knew what effect they wanted, and they may not have known the word nanotube, but they absolutely understood the outcome. This wasn't luck, it was controlled craftsmanship. And as of now, these are the oldest known carbon nanotubes ever discovered, from a time way long before nano had a name. Number 9. The Tunguska event. Back in 1908, something exploded above Siberia so violently that it leveled over 800 square miles of forest. Trees were flattened in all directions. The blast was felt hundreds of miles away, but no crater. For decades, theories piled up, everything from secret weapons to alien ships. Some blamed a comet or asteroid, but without an impact site, nothing held. The truth was harder to prove, but simpler. A space rock, most likely a meteor, had entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded mid-air. The heat, shockwave, and energy from the blast were enough to destroy everything below, even without touching the ground. It's called an airburst, and it matches every detail from eyewitnesses and physical damage. Tunguska didn't leave behind a crater because it never hit the surface, but it hit the sky hard enough to flatten an entire forest. And the reason it confused so many for so long? It happened far from anyone who could explain it. Number 8. The Tully Monster. When this weird thing was first found in Illinois in 1958, scientists didn't know what to do with it. The fossil looked wrong. 6 inches long, rigid body, eyes on stalks, and an odd claw-like mouth. It didn't look like any known animal, living or extinct. For decades, arguments went nowhere. Some said it was a vertebrate, while others insisted it wasn't. and the debate stalled because the creature refused to fit clean categories. That changed in 2016. Advanced analysis revealed structures consistent with a primitive spinal cord and features shared with jawless fish like lampreys. The verdict landed at last. The Tully Monster was an ancient vertebrate, more than 300 million years old. Still bizarre, still unique, but no longer misplaced. The fossil didn't change. Our understanding did. The Tully Monster reminds us that evolution doesn't care about neat boxes. Some creatures exist only to confuse the future. So, it was not a legend. Number 7. The fate of Ubar. Well, the story of Ubar sounded like another desert legend. Too big, too dramatic, too lost. Said to be a city of wealth and arrogance, Ubar was supposedly swallowed by the Arabian sands as punishment. Like it's mentioned in the Quran and passed down through local myth, but for centuries, no one took it seriously. There were no maps or ruins. Then came satellite imaging. In the 1990s, a research group in Los Angeles traced ancient caravan routes across the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter. They followed those trade lines until they found something: collapsed structures, stone tracks, and signs of long-forgotten settlement. Ubar, it turned out, had been buried, not by magic, but by time, drought, and the shifting desert itself. What people called a curse may have just been geology and decay. The site still needs excavation, but what's clear now is this: Ubar wasn't fiction. It was real, and lost only because the sand always outlasts memory. At number 6, Mona Lisa's hidden eyebrows. One of the oddest mysteries in art wasn't about secret codes or hidden religious meanings. It was eyebrows. For years, people asked why the Mona Lisa didn't have any. Was it a fashion statement at that time? Did Da Vinci forget them? Was it unfinished? It was such a small thing, but it bothered people. But the answer came back in 2007, when a high-res scan of the painting revealed faint traces of both eyebrows and eyelashes. They were there once, just erased by time, cleaning, and restoration efforts. Back then, preservation techniques weren't exactly delicate. Cleanings were rough, and over the years, subtle details like lashes and brows faded or got wiped out entirely. So no, Da Vinci didn't skip them. He painted them. The Mona Lisa didn't always stare out with that strange, expressionless face. She once had features we didn't see until centuries later. In the end, the question wasn't about mystery. It was about where, and how even masterpieces lose pieces we didn't know were missing. All right, now let's head over to number 5, reptile species. The first fossil of the Ichthyosaurs was found in the 19th century by Mary Anning and officially named in 1821. Just a year later, 3 more species were described, based on small differences in their teeth and skull shapes. Then, 2 of those were reclassified as separate kinds of ichthyosaurs. The third, Ichthyosaurus intermedius, was kept as a separate species, said to be related but distinct. But fossil records were messy. Some bones were incomplete, others were lost, and many lacked illustrations, making real comparisons difficult. And that left paleontologists unsure about what made one species different from another. In the 1970s, Dr. Chris suggested that I. communis and I. intermedius weren't separate at all. They were the same species. That view eventually stuck. After more than a century of confusion, the mix-ups were sorted, and what started as a mystery turned out to be a case of mistaken identity, hiding in plain sight. Number 4, the tremulous hand of Worcester. This 13th century scribe was left behind with pages filled with shaky, uneven writing. His name is unknown, but today he's called the tremulous hand of Worcester, named after the distinct tremor in his script. Historians believe he was a monk at Worcester Cathedral Priory. But his real story stayed hidden until historian Dr. Deborah Thorpe and neurologist Dr. Jane Alty began working together. And after closely studying his writing, they concluded that he likely had essential tremor, a chronic condition that causes the hands to shake, especially when doing fine motor work like writing. It's a condition that worsens over time. And for centuries, no one had guessed it could explain his handwriting. Before that collaboration, people assumed the script was just a quirk of style or age. But now, we know better. His handwriting wasn't just shaky. It was a trace of something real, a physical challenge, carried across every page, one uneven letter at a time. Number 3. The Pearl Harbor Ghost Plane. In December 1942, 1 year and 1 day after the Pearl Harbor attack, U.S. radar picked up a lone aircraft heading toward the coast. 2 fighters were sent up to intercept. And what they saw didn't make sense. An old American P-40 riddled with bullet holes, flying low, slow, and silent. The pilot looked slumped, possibly dead, until he raised one hand, waved weakly, and vanished with the plane into a crash landing. That was the story told for decades. Ghost plane, lost airman. Some thought it was real. Others weren't so sure. The truth? It was fiction. The tale came from World War II fighter ace Robert Lee Scott Jr., who wrote it as part of his book Damned to Glory. Over time, people retold it so often it got mistaken for fact. Even Scott didn't expect it to spread the way it did. The Pearl Harbor ghost story wasn't a mystery. It was a story of war. Number 2. Hebrew crucifix in Wales. Well, you'd expect an ancient crucifix with Hebrew writing to turn up in Jerusalem, not 8 inches below a field in Newport. But that's just what metal detectorist Malcolm Corfield found. Experts date the piece to around 800 years ago. It was likely worn as a charm to protect against illness, possibly something like fever or plague. On its surface is a Hebrew phrase, Et Gebir Liam Adonai, meaning, Thou art forever, O Lord. This same line shows up on other charms from medieval Europe and may have served as a personal prayer or spiritual safeguard. On the reverse are the letters A, W, O, and N, possibly initials from a longer religious text that's been lost over time. Though it was likely made in Wales, Hebrew was widely regarded as a sacred language during the 12th and 13th centuries, especially among Christians. That explains why it became super popular for protective objects like this one, even far from its cultural roots. At number 1. The first giant of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt didn't talk much about giants, but there was one named Sanakht. He ruled during the 3rd dynasty, around 4,700 years ago. And when his skeleton was found near Beit Khalaf back in 1901, one detail stood out fast. The man was huge, 6'6". That's not impressive today, but back then, it was big. Most men didn't break 5.5. Even Ramses II, one of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs, topped out at around 5'9". Sanakht was different. Modern analysis points to gigantism, a condition caused by abnormal growth hormone levels. If accurate, that makes him the earliest recorded case in medical history. And maybe that's the origin of all those old Egyptian references to tall, godlike figures. Sanakht wasn't a metaphor. He was a real man, walking through a world of smaller people, worshipped as a king, and remembered as something closer to a myth. Well, that's it for today, guys. If you found this video great, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for your support, and we'll catch you later.